We're going to look at a couple of settings here. We'll set the measurement precision. So we've gotten feedback from customers, and when a pipe is totaled up, sometimes they get 16ths or 8ths of an inch. So we'll see how to make that measurement precision come down to a 1/2 inch using architectural units. Pathing marks and tag style drawings on a network. We've had some customers that want to have custom BOM marks and tags that they want to place on a network, so the average user just can't use them or customize or change their marks. Excluding existing components from being added to your MML. We know that projects go through different phases, phase 1, phase 2, and you may have to add new piping to your model. So we'll look at a way to exclude any existing piping and just making it master material as an MML from your new piping. We'll also look at a way to exclude components on locked layers from being bubbled. A lot of times, we just want to bubble certain areas in our drawings. So we'll look at locking layers and just putting marks and bubbles on components in paper space that are unlocked. Snapping to default component. A lot of components, well, all components in CADWorx have an insertion point. So when you put a bubble on a component, it'll go to that, the midpoint of the pipe or the midpoint of a valve or whatever the insertion point is. We'll look at how to turn that snap default on and off so you can place bubbles where needed. And lastly, we'll take a look at setting up a bubble table format. And this is just justification, column width, and column header. So the user's not going to the table, going to the properties palette and making the mark ID wider and having to customize those columns over and over again as you create BOMs in your drawing. So with that said, let's jump into a model here. The first thing we're going to cover here, we're going to go over our setting measurement precision. So let's just start off by using our BOM tab and bubbling this drawing and getting a BOM set up. Put the bubbles in, we'll create a table here. And what we see in our quantity, we see 3/8, we see 16. A lot of times customers want to roll this up into closer to inches or feet. So with that being said, we can come in here into our settings, which is going to be this gearbox, gear icon. So every palette that we have this gear icon. If you click on this, it'll take you to your settings, which all of our Works products will be listed in. If we focus right now on the measurement field here, we can take this precision, we can go as high up to 7, depending if you're using decimal inches, feet, or we can go as low as 1. So for this example, we're just going to take it down to 2. We have our unit set at architectural, and we'll just hit OK here. And OK saves it. So there's no other buttons that you need to hit save and save this. Once you hit OK, it locks in your settings. And now the last thing we have to do for this is hit sync BOMs, and you'll see this precision here change. If this isn't good enough for you, can always go down to 1. And again, we're talking about architectural units here. So we'll take that down to 1. And this is kind of limitations. We can go to 1/2 inch. We can't really take it down to just whole inches or feet. So this is what a lot of customers are looking for to kind of get their bill of materials updated fast and get to a 1/2 inch here and change precision. Another thing we can do, I'm just looking at this BOM here. If we don't want all the pipe rolled up, we have an option here for our table style to include cut lengths. But with that said, we're going to have to add length into our selected field, right? Come here, hit L, we'll go on the length, we'll add it in. I'm just going to bring this up to be right in front of long description. We'll say OK here. We'll sync our BOM. And now we have quantities and we have length, right? So now we know we have a 1-inch piece of pipe. There's 3 of them, and they're 3 inches long. You can always go in here and you can check to make sure you have 3 number 1s, with a quick highlight. Options distribute. And we can come in here and quickly and see we have a 1 and a 1 here. We can't find a 3rd one, but we can kind of look around real quick and see if another 1 exists. See another cluster of bubbles up here, which I want to just distribute. And now I have another 1 here. So I can verify that I have 3 of these mark numbers here. So that looks at precision, and it looks at adding to our BOM to create cut lengths on the fly without having to rebubble our drawing, which is really important here because that can be time consuming. But with BUBBLEWorx, we can use the auto feature and just get bubbles on the page pretty fast. Speaking of the bubbles, we have bubbles and we have tags. So there's 2 different things here. When we talk about bubbling drawings, we're just talking about the components in the model, right? Your pipe, your fitting, your valves, your nuts, your bolts, things like that. When we talk about tags, we're talking about the actual tagging of a component. So a lot of times we have tags on valves, right? So where do these bubbles, where do these marks, where do these tags, these enclosures, where do they come from and where do we hold them? Let's jump back into our settings. And if we go up here to BUBBLEWorx at the very top, we'll see a folder here, the location where these drawing styles are kept, okay? ECE does a good job of storing these in your program files folder. It's kind of a one level of security, kind of locking down your marks for your tags and your bubbles. Marks, the mark style is, those go with your bubbles as far as your components, and the tags are the tags for any valves or supports that you might want to name. If we take a look at, let's bring in a marks drawing here. If we bring in the marks drawing, I'm going to close this down. I'll try to open it up in CADWorx here, and we'll get a read-only option. So this is kind of put in place to help an organization so users don't go in here and change the name of the file or add unwanted enclosures to the program. And if you want, so I don't want to open that, and if you want, you can take these marks drawings, let's open them up again, and you can put them out on the network and have everyone in your organization path out to these marks and tag drawings. Next thing we want to take a look at is excluding components on a locked layers from being bubbled. We have a note inside of our settings that talks a little bit about locked layers. And in parentheses, we show that on frozen layers, let's go in here, exclude components on locked layers. Frozen layers are always ignored. So this right here, this goes with, we've had a couple of questions about, is this a model space or a paper space thing here. This is actually a paper space. So when you're bubbling your drawings, if you have any pipe or any line numbers on a locked layer, those components will not be bubbled, okay? Let's go ahead and create a quick master material list here. I'm going to go into my model. A lot of us use XREFs, so we're trying to use these examples going back and forth from XREFs and back into our drawing where the XREF is held. So we can come in here and go to our MML pipe tables, and just with the model that we have in here, we'll create a master material list from drawing components. All right, and then we will save it in our BOM folder, because we all keep our master material lists in our BOM or master material folder. And you see this changed here. So now we have a master material list of all of our components in this model. Okay, go ahead, save this drawing, and we will go back over to our existing parts drawing. All right, so the good thing about this is you don't have to lock your layers in your model. You can come into this drawing here, you can go to your layers, and we can find out the lines that we want to lock. We can throw those on a locked layer here. And then what we'll end up doing, just do an auto bubble here. And we locked all the lines that were here, and we left one line turned on, right? So now we're just bubbling the items on the line that we want to bubble. Again, we came into our layers, and we just went ahead, selected the layers, the line number, because we do have layer by line number turned on in our config settings. So we just took those line numbers and we locked them right here in the drawing. You don't have to go back out to the model or anything like that. You do everything right here in the drawing. So that is a really cool feature that helps a lot of our customers kind of be productive and efficient with their bubble. The other thing that can happen here is we can put components on existing layers, right? So we talked a little bit about, let's go back to our model here. We talked a little bit about phases in a project, right? You have this section of piping was done in January. This section, it came back, there was some new equipment put in. This was done in August, and now here it is December, November, and we want to add a new section of pipe. So what we can do here, we can come in here and we can isolate by line number. We can isolate the lines that we want to leave on. You see that one go away. And just for ease of use, I'll go ahead and turn off these works boxes that were beautifully created with BUBBLEWorx. So let's go ahead and turn those off so they don't interfere with us putting these lines on existing layers. And then from here, I'll just go ahead and I'll just grab all my components. All right. And we'll just make everything here existing. Now that we have that existing, we'll turn our lines back on with our new line here. And again, let's go back and look at our settings for a second. If we take a look at these settings again, let's go here. we see here, we got a couple check boxes, right? We can include start and stop signs. We can exclude welds. Sometimes you don't want welds to show up on your MMLs. They just take up a mark number. Usually those are put toward the bottom of your MML. We can ignore bulk quantities. So this is, we can turn off, if your bulk quantity is 24 in parentheses, we can turn it off and kind of go after the long description of the bulk, excluding the quantity. So anything after the quantity on that long description, if it matches, it will put all those marks or all those items under the same mark number. Exclude components on locked layers. We just took a look at that and we saw how we can bubble the drawing, and anything that was on a locked layer would not show up and be bubbled in a paper space drawing. And here we are at exclude existing components. So this is a model space and an MML option here. So once we have exclude existing components checked, and we go in here, we run our MML, it's going to look at all of our components and take anything that's on an excluded or an existing layer or an existing component and leave it off of our MML. So let's go here and let's go ahead and run that. Let's go back to our MML pipe tables, and we will say create master material list again from drawing components. This time, keeping in mind that we have a lot of existing components here. And what I also want you to take a look at is the length of this list. You'll see the MML shrink, so you know that we have a new master material list being generated here. Let's go ahead and create. Let's go back to our BOM folder and select folder, and we'll run that. And you see this list got a lot shorter, right? We went from 80 items down to 30. So now we know we just have these components in. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's go back over to our drawing. And again, the big thing here, the big thing with this was creating a new master material list with just the components that were not on an existing layer. The next topic we want to cover with our settings is going to be object snap. A lot of us run into the same issue over and over when we're creating drawings. Now, my plan view may be a little exaggerated here, so you may not take up this much space, but there are times when we have our section views that have a tendency to run off of the page. In that case, let's just see what happens here. We know that we have our section mark cut here, and this should potentially be, out to here. Your view should be a little bit wider. We talked earlier about how every component in CADWorx or every 3D component has an insertion point. So if we go ahead and we put a single bubble here, let's turn snap on first. Guess you already saw where that one was located. But now we have snap on and we want to put a single bubble in. We can click here and that bubble's out there. And this happens from time to time when we're bubbling drawings. And now the user is kind of forced to move this over. And if it happens once or twice, maybe we can get away with it and it's not a big deal. But that drawing has to be updated, or you have more views that have pipe or components kind of going off of the allowed space in your paper space, the viewport. It can become a headache to start moving those over and over again. So what we've incorporated here is just to enhance the features of bubbling here. We just added the snap to default component. And again, you see paper space in parentheses. So now we'll have the ability to come in here and just add a single bubble anywhere on this component, right? You can put it anywhere, we can go any direction. And this has helped our customers a lot. Again, like I said, when those bubbles snap to a space that's outside of the viewport or out of the paper space, it can become a little tedious moving those around. And we already know that checking our drawings is a task in itself, and making sure dimensions and bubbles and everything are correct. So the last thing we want to do is worry about where a bubble is placed outside of our paper space here. Let's take a look at our final setting that we're going to cover here today. And we're going to take a look at our table format. A lot of times we spend time inside of our drawings. Let me go back to this precision measurement tab here. A lot of times we spend time in our drawings and we try to get column widths and things like that set. Maybe there's not enough space on in our drawing, and there's viewports here, and there's bubbles, and there's dimensions, and we're trying to squeeze this bill of material in. We're trying to do a lot of things to get it to fit. And we come in here and we change our cell width to 1 and things like that. And we do this over and over again. And sometimes we come in here and we try to enable table breaks. So if we turn that on, again, we're just trying to find room. Let me turn that 3 off. We break our table like this, and we try to get it to fit however we can, wherever we can. If you can get a standard setup Let's go back into our settings here. Get a standard setup, and you guys are cranking out drawings of the same units or a particular project, and you know that you want your mark number, the width of that column to be, let's go back down to 1, or you want it to be 0.5. You can get that set up. If you have your long description and you want it to be just called description, you can do that. Let's go back up here. We can change this back to mark. So now your headers, you're able to change that with your column headers. You can rename them here. You can set your column width here, and also justification. So another question we get about justification, let's go back. Another question we get about justification. Cancel this. Let's go here, and let's create a bill of material right here using these components. So we got our components in. I'm on my MML tab, and I will say bill of material from all bubbles. I got them rolled up here. Total. So a lot of times we get a question about the headers and the justification. So that justification is broad. So if you set your justification to be center, everything's going to be centered here. I know a lot of these columns, it's okay if they're centered, but a lot of times we like our long description to be left justified. So that's one thing you may have to go in and just adjust on the fly. But this is how our justifications are set up within our palette here. And again, going back and creating a table, this is where you will control all that for your tables. And that pretty much covers our settings for BUBBLEWorx today.